With an increase in legal marijuana use, discarded joints are becoming a hazard for dogs in areas like New York City. The opening of the first legal recreational marijuana dispensary in New York has resulted in more people smoking in public, which has led to an increase in dogs accidentally consuming these discarded joints or edibles. Veterinarians and pet owners are now worried about the rise in poisonings and attribute it to smokers who litter without realizing the harm it can cause to pets. The founder of City Pets, Dr. Amy Attas, joins me to discuss. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, because this is a problem that can be prevented with education. I've been a vet for more than 3 decades, and I've always seen marijuana toxicity in my patients, but it was a rare finding because people who smoked marijuana didn't really leave it out, and occasionally a pet would find something. Things really changed a few years ago when it became legal for recreational use, and I personally feel the difference from December 31st of last year until now, when recreational dispensaries were opened in New York City. So I think the thing we must realize is that, marijuana comes in multiple forms, and every one of them is toxic to dogs. So we have people smoking joints on the street and without realizing the significance, discarding the end of the joint, where, of course, dogs find everything they're not supposed to on the street and can eat them. But they're also enjoying their marijuana in an edible form, which we have to really stress because these are delicious. And you leave them out on the counter and your dog is going to find them as well.
I want to talk about that because you mentioned inside the home as well as outside the home. When did you begin to realize that this was an issue? I guess more recently.
So, ironically, earlier on in my career, inside the home was where pets were getting intoxicated and from the THC, because people would have their marijuana out while they were smoking it and the animals would get into it. Now with edibles, that's a big problem. Remember, a lot of edibles are made with chocolate. Very delicious for dogs, also very toxic. So when they ingest that, they're getting the double whammy. They're having the effects of THC, which is toxic, and also the effects of the chocolate, which are toxic. Some of the other edibles are made with fake sugars like aspartame, which are so lethal to dogs because their bodies recognize that aspartame as a super high dose of sugar. They get an insulin release and they die of hypoglycemia. So these products are really toxic to dogs. One more way dogs get injured by marijuana is through the smoke. Again, they can get that secondhand smoke and it causes lung damage and also gives them the toxic effects of the THC.
So I want to talk about what you said about the toxicity. Is it as in basically the pet could die, or is it just like they'll have a bad reaction to it?
So some pets die. That's not the typical reaction we see. I think it depends on a few things. It depends on the quantity ingested and also how high the THC level is in the marijuana. In the old days, marijuana didn't have as much THC. They've perfected, making that much, much stronger. So typically, the patients, they look different. They get the dilated pupils and the glassy eyes. So they have that look like they're stoned, but they're not having a pleasant stone. It affects their central nervous system. They become uncoordinated and wobbly. Many dogs will hurt themselves by falling down steps or having injuries from their inability to walk properly. It affects their heart rate. It affects their blood pressure. So these dogs are sick. They're not high. They're sick and they need medical attention.
I want to ask, if someone is at home and they notice, this behavior or these symptoms in their dog, what are some tips you would give them, or what should they look out for to know that this is, the response?
So the first thing is, if it's just happened, we want to do what we can to induce vomiting, because if we can get the substance out of the dog, they're not going to have as much of a toxic effect. So hydrogen peroxide given orally to dogs will make them vomit. If you are unable to do that or don't have the facility to do that, take your dog to the emergency room. Step 1, get the substance out. Step 2, we give them activated charcoal to help absorb the material and make it less of a load as it's going through the bloodstream. And then after that, it's all about supportive care to get them through the next few hours with the effects that it has on their central nervous system and their cardiovascular systems.
Now, I want to know, is this a common occurrence in New York City? And how often are people going to the vet because of this type of incident?
I wish I had the exact numbers for you. This is not what we call a reportable disease. So veterinarians aren't required to give this information into a central system. I wish we had that number. I think it would be helpful in educating people on how dangerous this is. But what I do know is emergency rooms around the city are reporting much higher caseloads of marijuana toxicity. So you can, as a veterinarian, I can diagnose this with a FaceTime. People say their dogs are acting weird. I look at them and I know. They have this characteristic, as I said, dilated pupil, funny look about their eyes, they're vocalizing, they're drooling, and then they'll often urinate when they're not aware that they're urinating. Classic signs of marijuana toxicity.
Now, last year, there was an 11% increase from the roughly 6,200 cases reported in 2021. And over the past 5 years, there has been a 300% increase. Why may this number be rising? And, as a veterinarian, what are some of your fears in regard to that?
I know this number is going to rise because more and more people have availability of marijuana and they're smoking in public places. It's hard to identify whether someone is smoking a cigarette or a marijuana joint, so they get away with it easily. And I think without education, we're going to see people discarding their joints like they've always discarded their cigarettes, which are toxic as well when dogs eat them, on the street. And I feel like this is an accident that doesn't have to happen. Nobody who's smoking marijuana on the street wants to hurt dogs. And if they understand that discarding their joints like this could cause a dog to spend a night or two in the hospital at a great expense to an owner, I know that they wouldn't discard their joints. If people knew that the edibles were so dangerous for dogs, they'd be a lot more careful with them. What I wish we could do is have a way of identifying this danger when people are buying their marijuana products. Signs in stores, public service announcements. This is a problem that can be 100% prevented. People can have their marijuana and just keep it away from animals. By the way, all animals, cats too,
Right.
birds as well, very toxic if ingested to any of these creatures.
Because you mentioned the other animals, I think this is not just like a personal thing to a pet owner. It's, for our wildlife, New York City, just in general. Do you think our city should step up and act on this and possibly create a law or have a station where people can safely dispose of their joints?
I think we have stations where we could safely dispose of our joints. We can throw them in the garbage. We can put them out, put them in our pockets, and get rid of them at home. It's about courtesy to others on this planet. We just need to be careful. I don't think people do this on purpose. Let's educate them to the dangers of marijuana to animals.
And then can you just talk about the emotional effect this has on pet owners as well as their pets?
So I think there are two pet owners we have to think about. The one who inadvertently makes their own pet sick by leaving out a product that makes their animal sick. I mean, emotionally, that must be devastating to know that you were the cause of your animal getting sick. You're going to get punished for that. The vet bills are high when you take your dog to the doctor for this. So I think that's something you're only going to do once. And then, of course, someone taking their pet out for a walk, thinking they're going to have a lovely experience, who, maybe you're on your phone for a second or you're not paying attention and your dog picks up something. The guilt that you have that, you're in charge of keeping them healthy and you took your eye off the ball for a moment. So there's a lot of emotional attachment to this.
So can you just briefly let us know, what can pet owners do to just avoid this from happening and harming their pets?
I think when you walk your dog, that should be your sole attention. Don't talk on the phone. Don't be doing other things. Keep your dog on a short leash and watch what they're doing. They can pick up something toxic in a millisecond. So I think more attention and perhaps, don't let your dog off the leash in an area where you think there might be a high likelihood that they could find something like discarded joints.
Exactly, especially like in places like parks where
Exactly.
people, they think it's safe for their animals to just maybe roam free. They give them a little bit more freedom, but those are also places where people go to smoke. So I 1000% agree.
Lots of potential dangers there.
Well, Doctor, I want to thank you so much for joining us and educating us and the Bronx community about this.
I want to thank you because I think we can prevent this problem with education.
If you would like to learn more about the amazing work Dr. Amy Attas does, please go to her website at www.citypets.com. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Open right after this.